But if we break that support level, then we're in trouble. So this is where I would put, but it really depends, and it depends on how strong is the trend. If we are in a strong bull trend, then the dips for me are for accumulation, not necessarily for exiting.
Hello, my name is Claudia and this is Crypto Chain, the channel that brings you crypto news, reviews, tutorials, and interviews. And joining me today is OJ from OJ Crypto. You can call him OJ Jordan, where he does a lot of videos about not only technical analysis, but also newbie videos about different projects, about NFTs, about crypto in general, right? So today he's actually joined to talk about an interesting topic that I've not covered on this channel before, which is CBDCs and the importance, or maybe should we worry about them? Not really the importance, right? Well, we're going to find out in today's video, so stay tuned. OJ, thank you for joining. If you could please quickly introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about yourself. How did you even get into crypto? And then we can get straight into CBDCs.
All right. Well, thanks for having me. It's my pleasure. Right. A little bit about myself. I've been dealing with crypto for how many years now? 5-6 years, since 2015. Oh. And I actually found out about Bitcoin earlier than that. I remember, first of all, people talking and stuff like that, but I didn't really take it seriously. And then there was an article at the Sunday Times, so one of the Sunday newspapers when I was living in London, and they were talking about Bitcoin now, this digital currency that people are starting to use. There's coffee shops opening and stuff like that. This was probably 2013 or something like that, maybe earlier. And but to me it seemed like too expensive already. It was way over $100, and I didn't understand why this digital currency, which is new, it's not backed by anything, why would it be so expensive? So at first I didn't really get it. Yeah. And then after that article, I went and I checked a little bit about it. I kind of got interested and I wanted to buy it, but at the time there wasn't really an easy way to get that. So you had to go to find people on different forums and things, and make deals peer-to-peer, really, person to person, but without knowing these people, going through escrow a lot of the times. And it just seemed to me very fishy, and just didn't trust it, didn't trust the process. So I couldn't get my hands on it back then. And then again, I got introduced to it in 2015. One of the companies that I was investing with, they were doing these micro payments, like maybe 5 or 6 times a day, you get a payment, dividends. And that was quite a few years ago. So, and it was a high yield investing type of thing. So because with Bitcoin, the fees were almost zero at the time, I chose to use it just as a payment method, not exactly as an investment tool. Instead of using other payment methods that would charge me a fee for every transaction. So when you're receiving, 5 or 6 transactions a day, and they're small transactions for like maybe $5 to $10 or something, you don't really want to pay a fee of $2 for that kind of transaction. So it was purely for the practical side of it that I got introduced into Bitcoin. At this point, we already had Coinbase, which was possibly the first service that was offering, you could basically buy Bitcoin with your credit card. And that to me was the easiest way, because with the credit card at the time, I still had a lot of faith in the financial institutions. I knew that if something goes wrong, I can claim that transaction back or something. So it was the security of it that made me use Coinbase. I don't use it anymore. Unfortunately, Coinbase to me right now is not really the best service anymore. But at the time, it was a great onboarding service for first-time users. And for a long time, I was also recommending it to all of my friends and people that I know that wanted to get into Bitcoin. It still works as a first-time buyer type of thing, but unfortunately, they're heavily regulated, and there's way too much control over the transactions and everything with Coinbase. That's why I don't really use it anymore. But that's how I got into crypto. So since 2015, I've been first Bitcoin. In 2016, I started getting a little bit of Ethereum, Litecoin. And then it progressed into the 2017, actually, when we started talking about the fork of Bitcoin and the threat of how we can split the chain and with all that uncertainty. This is when I diversified heavily into altcoins, and I got a lot of Monero, Dash at the time. Stratis used to be a strong project. So many that these days we're not really talking about, but yeah, that's how I started. And I've been doing videos since 2016. Pretty much what I did was watch YouTube videos. A lot of crypto influencers, I mean, at the time there weren't too many, but about 10 people or something. Omar Crypto was one of the first ones. Heidi was also there. There was Amanda B. Johnson who was talking a lot about Dash. So when I watched all of these videos, that helped me to get, you know, an understanding of crypto and everything. This is why I decided to start my own channel, and pretty much the information I was absorbing, I was then relaying to my followers and everything.
Yeah, absolutely. And what's interesting is that now there are just so many crypto channels that a lot of us have specialized in different sections. So there are like multiple people doing TA videos, but then some of them might focus on specific projects and they'll do TA only for those, because almost everyone is doing TA on Bitcoin, right? So people are like, it's boring now to watch all the TA videos about Bitcoin when there are hundreds of channels all doing the same. So I've noticed that a lot of them are specializing in certain assets, like Cardano, for example, or Polkadot, some of them like. And so then aside from that, there are also the specializations for the actual news videos. So for example, my channel does a lot of Polkadot news videos. I've started looking into Cosmos recently as well. There are others that do Solana, that do Cardano. So it's just amazing how much we've split, let's say, and we've spread across. So now you can find a crypto YouTube channel about many niches, right? Even NFTs, metaverses. It's crazy how it's growing.
I was going to say, at first it makes things easier, so you can actually find content that is relevant to you. But on the other hand, with all of the abundance of opinions and channels and everything, you can also get lost. So I try to cover various topics and not to focus on just one thing, but of course, for me, I always keep my focus on Bitcoin and Ethereum because they are the leading cryptocurrencies. And also with Bitcoin, it moves the market. So if Bitcoin now goes into a bear cycle, or as we saw from November, basically, we were in a mini bear cycle, it moves the rest of the market with it. Alts are also dropping. So, you know, as money is coming out of Bitcoin, money is not always going into alts. You get that in a bull market, but in a bear market, money is going into stable coins or fiat. So even if you're not trading Bitcoin, you still have to keep an eye on its chart and what it's doing, because you have to see if there is a big drop coming or starting already, then you know that you can expect a very big drop in your outs. And Bitcoin usually is the first to make the big drop. And to pull the rest of the market.
Yeah, so and the main reason why we're seeing this is because of the amount of exchanges that have the Bitcoin pairs with the altcoins. But do you think going forward, we're going to see this kind of split, this kind of separation eventually, where every altcoin is going to have its own course, like in the stock market, and there won't be a dependency on Bitcoin? Or do you think this dependency will remain for the foreseeable future?
Yeah, it will remain. It will remain. I mean, there are even Ethereum, if you think about it, second, many people don't even want to call it an altcoin, second biggest, you know, cryptocurrency. It's not really decoupled from Bitcoin. Whenever Bitcoin drops by 5 or 10%, which is, you know, a bit of a significant drop, I'm not talking 1 or 2 or 3%, but 5-10% moves are always hand in hand with Ethereum as well. It drops as Bitcoin drops. And as Ethereum does that as well, the king of altcoins, then many of the altcoins are doing worse. They're going, you know, more than 10, 11, 12% when Ethereum drops by 6 or 7. When Bitcoin drops by 5 or 6%, many of the altcoins drop by 8%, 10% even. So definitely there is this correlation, because as money is going into crypto, a lot of the times money is going first in Bitcoin, then Ethereum, and then other altcoins, right? People usually trust the cryptocurrencies that have already established and have a long track record. So this is why we are seeing these kind of bigger drops in altcoins as Bitcoin or and Ethereum drop, because then people, when they get scared, they're not going into other altcoins, they're actually coming out of them. They're, they're getting the money out into stable coins or fiat.
Yeah.
And this is why these drops are significant. And this is why Bitcoin and Ethereum are very important to watch, even if you're not trading them.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, how do you see it going forward? For example, in terms of trading strategies, let's say when you're trading, I know that you always have to look at the Bitcoin chart, but do you use the same kind of plan when you're trading your altcoins as you do with Bitcoin? Like, do you use, for example, your strategy with the stop losses, with the percentage differences, the same for Bitcoin as for altcoins, or do you have a different plan for those because of the lack of liquidity for the altcoins?
Well, no, I mean, my stop losses are set according to the current trend and the current support and stuff like that. So I would still do that individually. I'm not really going according to Bitcoin, but I'm assuming what Bitcoin might do. So if I think that Bitcoin could drop by 5%, then I'm assuming what is the, if that is the first or the second level of support, then I would go to whichever altcoin I'm looking at, and I will see which are the couple of support levels. Right. And I will decide whether it's likely to drop to the first or the second support level or the third support level, let's say. Right. And this is where I'll be putting my stop losses. If I think that the first support is definitely going to be hit, then I'm not going to put my stop loss there. I would assume that we might actually get stopped by the second support level, and then I would put my stop loss a little bit below it, so that if we actually touch that level, I don't get stopped out. But if we break that support level, then we're in trouble. So this is where I would put, but it really depends, and it depends on how strong is the trend. If we are in a strong bull trend, then the dips for me are for accumulation, not necessarily for exiting. But right. If we are in a shaky market like we are right now, then my stop losses could be a bit tighter, right? Right. But it really, there is no one strategy to just, set it and forget it. Yeah. You have to adjust all the time.
And this is why bots are struggling, right? This is why you don't see the perfect bot for trading.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. It works well in a bull market, but in a bear, it's not so good. It's
absolutely. I've tried so many bots, and some of them I'm happy with during a bull market, but I'm not happy with any bots in a bear market. None of them, not one has actually proven to be any better than the other one in terms of bear market activity.
And that's why humans are still the best in terms of trading so far. We're the major bot, the important bot. Okay, yeah. So talking about bots and talking about moving into stable coins, let's kind of switch this now to the CBDCs, because we want to talk about this topic. And you said you're really versed in this topic, so I'm curious to get your thoughts. So how do you think this is going to impact the crypto market?
We need to really make people alert about the dangers of CBDCs, because as always, any new technology starts well and then it gets, perverse, it gets twisted and used in a bad way. And this is here one of the narratives that is being sold to the public, how CBDCs are going to enable people to transact cheaper and make it much easier and all of those things. And it's basically, this is this is a statement that is pretty much summing up how CBDCs are being sold to the public for the benefits of them. The general public will be one of the biggest beneficiaries, they say, of CBDCs, as it will give them access for the first time to a digital form of central bank money. For the first time, hold on, we've been having digital form of money for the last 20 years, if not even 30 now. I mean, most of the money today is not paper money anymore. Most of the money is actually digital on screens and entries in the bank ledgers. So when you're transacting online, all of these transactions are done in digital form of money, in the digital form of the money you're using, whether it be dollar or euro, whatever it will be. So this here is a very misleading kind of a statement that is just kind of pointing out the benefits of a digital currency. However, we have to be aware, and Edward Snowden actually warned us about this. This is on his blog from last year. He's saying, I will tell you what CBDC is not, and it is not, as Wikipedia might tell you, a digital dollar. After all, most dollars are already digital. This is actually exactly what I just said. Existing not as something folded in your wallet, but as an entry in a bank's database. And then he continues, instead, a CBDC is something closer to being a perversion of cryptocurrency, or at least of the founding principles and protocols of cryptocurrency. Because cryptocurrencies were actually supposed to be, first of all, they have to be cryptographic. They cannot be, not everything should be open, right? With cryptocurrencies, this is why we have the cryptography there. Even though they're transparent and they're recorded on digital ledgers that are publicly verifiable, you still have that anonymity of the wallets. You know, we call Bitcoin pseudonymous, not anonymous exactly, but pseudonymous. You don't necessarily know who is transacting and, you know, who that wallet belongs to unless you go through KYC. And this is where all the regulation is hitting right now, because everything, you know, governments want to regulate everything. And with CBDCs, they have the chance of regulating even how you spend your money. This is the big danger of CBDCs. And this is why he calls them a perversion of cryptocurrency, because they're using the blockchain technology. They're using a lot of the features of cryptocurrencies, but unlike a true cryptocurrency, these are not going to be decentralized. They're centralized currencies, digital currencies. I don't even want to call them cryptocurrencies. And on top of that, they are programmable money, which is the big danger for us, because at first you have here a digital currency that is controlled by a single entity, centralized entity, central bank in this case. So all of the entries, all of the transactions, everything is recorded. Everything is going to be traced and tracked instantly in real time, something that we haven't had until now. This is a precedent in human history, that you now have money that is in real time being traced and tracked. Because to this day, if you have cash in your pocket, you can still go and spend that cash with no record of it, right? And I'm not saying that we have to be able to do money laundering and all of these illegal activities. You know, privacy is not always going hand in hand with wanting to be a criminal of sorts. So just the very freedom that you can actually spend money without necessarily having to report everything that you spend. Let's say I just sold an old ebook of mine, or an old book of mine on Amazon or something. This is a transaction that is not taxable, right? But there are many other things that you might sell that money going into your bank could actually be tracked as a taxable transaction, even if it's not necessarily. It makes everything much more complicated if everything is like that. I can go and sell something of mine to someone for cash, and this is not a taxable event. But if money goes into my bank account, then immediately it becomes a taxable event, and until I prove that it's not a taxable event. So it's much more complicated, but the actual danger is not that. The actual danger is that governments really want control, full control and surveillance. And we have seen how technology has really helped that surveillance to a big extent. I mean, with social media, at first we were very happy that finally we have these different pages and things, profiles, where we can actually have a presence online, and it was beneficial for everyone. Finally, everyone had their own page, their own things that they can share, pictures, you know, articles, things, opinions. And it was great until a few years later, we realized that all of this data that we are producing, all this digital record that we are leaving, you know, online, is being used now in other ways. And a lot of the times in a way to as a surveillance, you know, and even it got to the point where Cambridge Analytica used database, you know, people's records and stuff to actually target them for political, you know, political gain, to interfere with elections, stuff like that. So this is dangerous. This is a precedent. Now governments are going to have all of that surveillance with your money as well. every transaction being traced. But not only that, on top of that, you have now that danger of money being programmed. What does that mean? This is the Telegraph here. This is an article in the Telegraph from last year, where they're actually talking about how money can now be programmed in this way, that it can be targeted to be spent for certain things and not being able to be spent for other things. And it sounds a little bit far-fetched at first. I mean, I thought that this is something that we can only see in China or North Korea. You know, they already have this kind of systems in place. With China, you have this point system where you are stopped from traveling or doing certain things if you're, you know, if you don't have certain points. Similar things can be done with this programmable money. So this is the Telegraph. Bank of England tells ministers to intervene on digital currency programming. And they have called ministers to decide whether a central bank digital currency should be programmable, ultimately giving the issuer control over how it is spent by the recipient. Now, this is really dangerous. Do you know what that means? This is basically telling you that they can decide that, just like coupons, you know, certain money, you know, certain amounts, let's say, of money could be allocated to certain products or certain services and not being able to be spent on others. Let's say they decide that your government decides that, especially if you're in a crisis or something, they can decide that you're not allowed to spend more than X amount of money on fuel and more than X amount of money on food supplies or something like that. And you cannot be spending let's say you can't spend more than 1,000 euros or dollars or whatever on a holiday, or more than 2,000 on a holiday. They can decide how you're actually going to spend your money. Yeah, this is possible. And this is what they're talking about here. And of course, they're saying there could be some socially beneficial outcomes from that, preventing activity which is seen to be socially harmful in some way. But what is seen as socially harmful by one government might not be what is seen by socially harmful by another government, right? But at the same time, it could be a restriction on people's freedom. And that is exactly what it is. It will be a restriction on people's freedoms. Yeah.
And sorry to interrupt here, just 1 second. This kind of brings me back to, let's say you want to buy a property or you want to buy a car. The majority of banks have a limitation. So you actually have to go either to the bank branch or to the director, let them know at least 48 hours in advance that you need to be able to make a transfer of X amount of money. And then you have to sign a paper. Once you sign that paper, they give you access and then you can make the transfer. And then after a certain period of time, they block it once again and limit it. Obviously, they say this is for your security, but at the same time, this is also a way to tell you what you can do and what you cannot do with your money, because they can say no if they have a reason to, right? So just imagine you have X amount of money in your account and you're limited to...
Yeah, but this scenario that you are explaining is still not that much of a threat, because here we're talking about the bank basically still releasing that money when you are guaranteeing that you're the person that is withdrawing it and it's your money and you have all of that record that it's legally, you know, acquired and all of that. Yeah. But now we're talking about the government even deciding on little things, as in literally, let's say if you're making $2,000 a month or 2,000 euros a month, they can decide X amount of that has to go for bills and whatever. X amount is pocket money. They can really control now how you spend your money. Or they can say we have shortages of certain product. Let's say right now oil is a pressing issue, gas and oil. They can say, all right, you can spend X amount on oil, meaning you're not going to drive as much as you want. You will be restricted now as to how much you drive your car because of shortages of oil. And this could be, I mean, you can say this is reasonable because the government is struggling with supplies or something like that. But this could be reasonable today, and tomorrow it could not be reasonable anymore. They can actually abuse this, especially if it gets into the hands of a abusive government, a government that is abusing power. And many governments in the world are abusing power. We don't have democracy in that many governments in the world.
Yeah.
What is even more scary is that we actually have now 87 countries in the world exploring CBDCs. And out of this is actually the map, and I can send you that link later on. This is a map of all of the countries that are exploring or already working on CBDCs. We actually have, how many? 9 countries have already launched their CBDCs. China, Nigeria being one of the biggest actually. There's 7 Caribbean countries. The Bahamas are also there. Yeah. So definitely that's not something that is yet to come, that will be happening in the future. We're talking about already having that in 9 countries. 15 countries are already either launched or in pilot stage of their CBDCs. Jamaica, South Africa, Sweden, Malaysia, Russia, Ukraine, Thailand, Singapore, China, of course. I think India is preparing. Yes, 16 countries are in development. Brazil is there, Turkey, Canada, India, Japan, Israel. I mean, everyone is working on CBDCs already. That's not something that is going to be happening in 10 years' time or in a distant future. This is something that is happening right now. Probably by the end of this year, we're going to see at least another 4 or 5 countries that have already launched or testing crypto, their own CBDCs. Again, I don't want to call them cryptocurrencies because these are central bank digital currencies. They're not really cryptocurrencies.
Exactly. They're just trying to use the name and trying to piggyback off the popularity of Bitcoin, let's say, or other cryptocurrencies.
Exactly. Now, all of these that we are seeing right now on the screen are they have already launched.
But then how do you think you can actually fight against something like this? Because think about it, if supermarkets and the majority of the people don't accept cryptocurrencies as payment, then how can we fight against them, basically? This is my point. Like, we are still stuck under their decisions.
Right. And well, I think that the first thing for us to be, we'll have to voice out our concerns directly to ministers and people that are representatives of our voice in government, because if we actually find a way to educate people on the dangers, and you have a majority now of the population being against something, then things can be changed, because you find representatives in government and they start lobbying for these changes. And if you have enough of a strong voice, things can change. However, if everyone is oblivious about these things, like right now here, this article is talking about how ministers are being called to intervene on the decision for whether the money should be programmable or not. So I feel that this is the time to actually step in and kill this decision before it's actually gotten to a point of, of already being accepted or something like that, because a lot of the times these decisions are being made at closed doors, and we hear about them once they're being voted into laws, right? Or all kinds of bills. But we can actually intervene during the decision-making process. And this is important. If we know ahead of time that this is actually already happening, we have to find ways to talk to ministers and people who are representatives of us in government, and let them know that this is really a concern, that we are really against this. And there's so many different areas being representative in government. Surely some of these will find people that will be on their side. Now, I'm not saying that ministers will easily be convinced that this is in our best interest. A lot of the times they might actually really think of what's in government's best interest and not really in nation's best interest. But this is a conversation that needs to start. And so far, I haven't really seen this conversation anywhere in the media. There are articles in the media about this, but I'm not seeing even bloggers or news reports or anything like that discussing these topics enough. So the conversation needs to start.
It's probably requiring some sort of petition, and then once you have enough votes in that petition, then you could.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Wow.
So
yeah, I mean.
This is what I'm trying to achieve with, talking about, I talk about them on my channel, on my blogs as well. And I keep ringing the bell about this because I first started talking about CBDCs against CBDCs a couple of years ago, or was it in 2018 actually, when when we first started hearing that countries are preparing to to develop CBDCs. And and it's been now how many years since 2018? 4 years, and I haven't really seen any progress in terms of people awareness. I've seen progress in terms of countries developing them, because last year there were 80 countries, the year before there were 60 countries. Today, the report is showing 87 countries. So clearly, it's only going up. And there's two actually countries that have cancelled. From 91 countries that are being explored, 2 countries have cancelled and 7 countries have inactive CBDCs, including Finland and Denmark and Egypt and North Korea, strangely enough. But 87 countries are currently exploring and developing CBDCs. So really, the number is just growing.
But do you think this could also be seen as something positive if we exclude the part about the control, because we are moving towards a digital world? So as things are progressing, as advancing, we're seeing robots being designed now. They're getting more intelligent. We'll eventually get to a point where they will no longer be drivers for certain jobs, or they will no longer be employees for certain jobs, because robots are going to take over. So do you not think this is something that's also positive because of the way forward into the future, moving towards a digitalized world, digitalized economy?
Yes, in fact, I do recognize that CBDCs, or digital currencies, let's say, are inevitable. And I know that in the future, I wouldn't say in the next 10 years, it will probably take a bit longer, because I still see a lot of regions around the world that are not really having the infrastructure to support digital payments only yet. But in the future, it's almost a guarantee that we will move into digital money rather than physical fiat money. But the main thing for me is to actually stop the danger of programmable money. I want for people to actually stop this, because digital money, it could be programmable, but it doesn't have to be, right? Smart contracts are on Ethereum, but Bitcoin is digital money without it being programmable. You do not run, you can now with Taproot upgrade, you can run smart contracts on Bitcoin, but when it first started Bitcoin, it did not have that upgrade. It did not have smart contracts. So not every digital currency is necessarily having to be or can be programmable in that sense. Of course, it is programmable by default, because as you create it, you program it. But this, in the initial stage of development, as you program it, you don't have to be setting any kind of parameters on how it is spent, right? This is a big danger for us, that with the digital currencies, especially now that we are in the smart contracts world, for the last few years, we've had Ethereum and now so many other blockchains that are running smart contracts. So central banks and the teams that are developing these central bank digital currencies, they see how money can be programmed. They see what smart contracts can do to money, something that we haven't had ever before. So this is the danger. We actually have to stop the programmable part, where money can be decided how it is spent. It should not, because you're cutting liberties. You're cutting off people's liberties, and you have never done it in that way. This is unprecedented. This, for me, is the big danger.
Yeah, no, it's interesting, and I totally agree with you. I see what you mean now. And have you done anything in terms of petitions, or have you spoken to anyone? Do you know anyone? Do you have enough connections to know where to even start to
don't have enough connections. I have signed a few petitions that I've come across that are against them. And I keep doing that. Recently we also had another extremely, because I'm in Europe, extremely bad bill that was introduced just last week, days ago, basically, by the EU Parliament, where they want to now impose KYC on every transaction from a hardware wallet into a centralized wallet. So if you're using Coinbase, or I'm using Bitpanda, or another centralized service that where you are exchanging your Bitcoin or other cryptocurrencies into fiat and then moving it into your bank account or withdrawing it from a card or something.
Yeah.
Now the EU Parliament wants you to be filling in a form where you are putting addresses, ID numbers, and things like that. If you're moving money from a, let's say, Trezor or Ledger wallet, a hardware wallet that has not had a KYC forms filled in, and you are moving this money into your exchange service that is centralized and that is regulated. So they want to be able to trace even those anonymous transactions, which was the whole purpose of cryptocurrencies in the first place, is to give that anonymity, to give that privacy to people. And because at the end of the day, it is my money, it is my, decision how I'm spending it. Of course, as I'm exchanging it into fiat and as I move it into my bank, it gets reported. I have to declare it and everything. So this, I don't have anything against that, but being able to track all of my movements of money and kind of always kind of breathe in my neck and give me that pressure of what are you doing? Are you doing this right? This is not right. This should not be the case.
Yeah, I see what you mean. Yeah, you don't have any privacy in what you're doing, and everyone can see what you're doing, and you're in the same situation as a bank account, basically, unless you use cash.
Someone decides that you are doing something that they don't like, and they freeze your funds, and you are not able to travel, you're not able to withdraw your own money. This is the kind of sanctions that they're imposing on criminals and on Russia right now for starting the war and all of those things. Right now, these are sanctions that are being accepted as something beneficial because they're being imposed on really grave acts of dangerous acts. However, that's the problem, is that with this programmable money that the Bank of England is talking about, this is now opening a precedent where they can do that for anything. They can do it with just a press of a button, with a switch. So it's going to be way different than what we are currently seeing. I mean, recently in Canada, there was this big protest, the trackers, everyone knows about that. I mean, whether you agree with their point of, with their stance against vaccines or you don't agree, it doesn't really matter. The result is that all of their assets were frozen, all of their activity, banking and financial transactions were blocked, to the point where even their exchanges accounts were traced and tracked and everything, and they were not even allowed to exchange the Bitcoin that they collected as donations, because people were donating them cryptocurrencies in order to bypass the sanctions against them. And they were stopped, they were blocked for being able to exchange these cryptocurrencies, Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies, into fiat at the point of, because the exchanges are centralized. So at that point of withdrawing, after you exchange it, you couldn't withdraw it to your bank account because you have that blockage on your bank account. So this is a bank account. You can do that because a bank is a centralized authority. But when this is being rolled out to all kinds of money that you're using, because now all of the money is digital and it's all being issued by that central bank, then really you have no choice. You are going to be controlled and you're going to be censored in any way, censored on social media, censored in financial wise, censored in every way. So this mass surveillance that we are opening the door to with the digital currencies, with the CBDCs, this is unprecedented. And for the first time, we're going to be seeing this kind of huge control that the government is getting, even more control. They already own everything about you. Now they're going to own every penny in your pocket, and it's not going to be in your pocket anymore.
Yeah. Crazy. No, I mean, it's crazy, but we'll have to see if we can manage to fight out of this or find a way to protest against it, because it seems that nowadays when you protest, things get done much quicker than before. And now it's easier to protest than ever because of social media, because it's easier to spread the word to other people, etc. So we have to see how things go. So I'd like to thank you very much for explaining that to us and for giving us more information. But I do have one final question I need to ask you, and that is, what is one thing in life that you truly desire?
That's an interesting one. I pretty much live my life in a way that I should just be happy. This is, you know, something that makes me feel good. And unfortunately, there's many things that are happening in the world that don't make me feel good. But I try not to focus on things that are beyond my control. And this is probably the answer, you know. Whatever is in my power, I do in order to just be content and have a happy life. And I try to be good to people. This is one thing that if everyone is trying to be good to people and not really to be too judgmental and fight with people for having different beliefs or different understanding of the world and stuff like that, this is really what I want. This is the main goal for me. For people to get along, and you know, for everyone to just focus on themselves and how they can progress and stop bickering and stop looking at other people and fighting with other people for something that, you know, that you don't agree with or something like that. Especially in the events of the last couple of weeks as well, you know, with the Oscars problem and all of that. I feel right now, really, this is quite a pressing issue. Just think about yourself and stop judging everyone else and stop, you know, trying to tell people what to think and how to think. You know, if it offends you, then, you know, just be offended, but don't fight. Don't be aggressive. Just live in a harmony. This is what I want.
That's the important thing. Yeah, absolutely. You're right. Think positive, basically. Try to be as optimistic as possible, regardless of the situation around the world. Obviously, it's out of your control, so you can't do anything. OJ, thank you very much for joining. I appreciate it. And by the way, if you are interested to subscribe to OJ's channel, you can find the link both in the pinned comment of this video and in the description if you're watching this on Odyssey, for example. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Take care. Bye-bye.